Okay, so we want our brand to be very much part delivered through our employees. And one of the ways to do that is to build the brand internally. So just in the same way that we market and communicate with our target customers, we need to do this with our employees as well. So we obviously want to be really clear about what our core values are and those messages are, what it is that we stand for, what our mission is, and ensure that employees that we recruit are really consistent with those values and they share them. Also, we want to make sure that that brand meaning is really clear to the employees. And one of the ways we'll do that is through an internal communications program. So again, we need to think about what kinds of media, what messages are we going to use, communicate with the people that work for us. I mean, essentially what we want to do is create everybody that works for us to be real brand advocates. So these are people that will really convey brand meaning, but also be great ambassadors of the brand. And outside of our organisation, will talk positively about the brand, tell positive stories about the brand, and tell people what a great place to work, and really build and help us gain that reputation. And if we have people who already work for us that behave like that, those are our kind of existing brand champions, we can use them as role models. So a little bit of sort of influencer marketing, so get them to get the message out for us and influence other people that work for us, and get them on board with our brand, and help them understand what the brand means and what it stands for, and really sort of be very much in line with the internal culture. In many contexts, but not all, we will deliver the brand experience through the people that work for us. So if we look at something like the iStore, where it's very much the employees are very much at the core of our delivering our brand promise. So they clearly need to have that deep understanding of what our brand meaning is, and they need to know how should they behave to ensure that they deliver that on brand meaning to customers. Because essentially what they're doing is they're making the brand alive, they're bringing it to life, and they're kind of the lived element of that brand. So if they are inconsistent, then that's going to be hugely problematic. And remembering that we are social beings, and as customers, we can really want to connect with the brand and buy into everything that the brand says about itself, and all elements of the experience. But if we talk to the employees and we interact with the employees and that's not consistent with our expectations, that can be hugely problematic because it can destroy our experiences. Just like the Scandinavian work tells us around moments of truth, that those opportunities, those touch points being moments of potential misery, magic, or mediocrity. So the brand really, the organisation really has to be able to support employees in delivering an on-brand experience for all of its target customers. Pretty recently, we covered stuff on luxury and luxury brands. And again, this is something we want you to revise for the exam. So think about what those drivers of luxury are, as we talked about in the lecture. So the fact that people have more money to spend, the fact that social mobility is more accessible. So we don't need to feel like we can't access certain brands because we're of a social class. Globalization and the breaking down and barriers of communication mean that brands that would previously might have found it difficult to develop and communicate an image, a brand image, a luxury brand image in another country can now do that really easily and drive demand. So all of these things mean that luxury is growing, and the notion of luxury is becoming more and more attractive, particularly in the in sort of Eastern Asia. It's something that's particularly growing in that area. Remembering that quality experience needs to come before that kind of inaccessibility and exclusivity. Retail footfall is declining, so despite some of the research telling us that brands and luxury brands in particular need to add a real experiential element to their luxury brands, there is a decline in people going into shops essentially. So that can be problematic for luxury brands. Most luxury consumers are people who are very engaged on social media platforms. So that's something that we need to think about as a luxury brand and be really on board with that, particularly obviously the millennials. And there's a real growth of this global middle class, but luxury, as we read in the Inconspicuous Consumption article, is becoming much less of a symbol in the UK. So in developed markets, in times of recession, it may be that we don't want to really project those symbols of wealth. But in undeveloped markets where perhaps the economy is booming, that is less of an issue, and actually symbolic consumption is pretty much rife. So all important stuff that you need to be familiar with for the exam. Have another look over that article that we read in last week's seminar on inconspicuous consumption, because that's always a useful piece of research. Okay, remembering that Cat Ferrer and Bastian have these rules of anti-marketing. So again, this is something that you need to familiarise yourself with, and not just being able to list out the different rules of anti-marketing, but being able to explain them in some depth and why they are anti-marketing, noting that there are overlaps. So, you know, it's ignoring demand and enthusiasts only is kind of a bit of an overlap in a way. It's essentially a lot of it means the same thing. But I have put that article on the blackboard, Cat Ferrer and Bastian, that go through these different rules. So the premise of anti-marketing is essentially this idea that everything you have learned on marketing, so all the marketing management stuff you've learned over the last couple of years, if you are a luxury brand, it doesn't apply. That's their argument. That's the core tenet of their theory. Okay, and then they go through a series of rules that apply. So forgetting positioning, because luxury is superlative, not comparative. So we shouldn't be looking to compare and position ourselves subjectively, like we talked earlier in the lecture, against other competitor brands. We want to be unique. It's all about crafting and creating a unique image. We don't worry about product flaws because that adds to authenticity. Authenticity is really important for luxury brands. So you might own a Patek Philippe watch and it loses time, but that's not a problem, because the reason you're wearing it is not about being on time. If you want it to be on time for everything, there are a number of different, much cheaper, functionally based alternatives. Ignoring demand and enthusiasts only is kind of talking about this idea of it being exclusive and being difficult to obtain. So it needs to be accessible to a certain few, but not everybody, because luxury is a rarity, remember. It's not something we consume often. It's not accessible to everybody. So we make it difficult to buy. It's not, we're not, out of stock is not a problem for us. It's what we want in many ways, because it crafts and creates more of an image. Advertising doesn't sell, so we don't give out a lot of information on advertising. So we're not sort of got calls to action like we would in normal regular advertising. We don't tell people where to buy. We don't give a lot of product information. And equally, we advertise beyond the target audience as well. So one of the key premises of marketing communications is that we identify and profile that target audience, and we only target them. We're not going to waste money sending messages to consumers that are never going to engage with our brand. But with luxury brands, this is something we actively do, because for them to be symbolic, those symbols have to be understood by other people. So it's really important that actually we do communicate beyond the target audience. And price for luxury is just a technical detail. It's not something we're going to get concerned about. It's essentially, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. You know, this is not something. There are examples in the Cat Ferrer and Bastian article that talk about, and in the book, that talk about this idea of actually putting the price up if you're having issues with a luxury brand. So rather than discounting will only damage the image. So, you know, price is it's not important. It's not a technical detail. Okay, so I've obviously gone over the key areas of the revision for you there. I'm sorry that I've done it in two parts, but a little problem. Thank you for engaging with the module, and good luck with your exam. If you've got any questions, obviously you can drop me. I will be looking at my emails over Christmas, but probably not on Christmas Day and Boxing Day. I might have a couple of days off. But do feel free to drop me any questions. Good luck with the exam, and I'll probably see you at some point in the new year.